Welcome back to Horizon's Person to Person podcast. We're picking up where we left off with Bizerka. We're going to her world, Salvage, and we'll be talking to her about what she hopes that we will learn from this amazing new world. So, we just entered the world of Salvage, and I see people sitting in front of, I believe that's what you call a hutch? The house?
That is the hutch. It has home there. And at this time, it does not have the entry to the hutch. This is just, again, the overview.
Okay.
The hutch is the small space in which they had to live in. This is showing outside. He's playing an instrument that was handmade, showing that even at the times of pain and suffering, Black people had joy too. They had, slaves were trying their best to enjoy their life the best they could with what they had. That was the point of showing this. Laundry was done by hand and hung on lines, very similar to others. There was the smoke pit for their food if they were to get any meats. Usually the food was cooked in a pot, bones and leftovers of any kind, and that's how they were able to obtain their daily diet, was with the little scraps that they were given, making soups out of them or stews. Now, the slave owners, or the ones who were considered controlling the slaves, making sure they're following rules. When you go close, you'll hear words because we didn't understand as Black people what they may have heard and get lashed. There was no words that we knew. Now, he should be, if you get up on him, it's not working. Okay, I'm going to have to find out what's going on with that. I apologize.
Oh, there
you go. He is to do that, and when that happens, it throws you, as you can see, Spectral got sent to another location. So you should be able to go up close enough where it's going to send you to that lashed area.
Oh, wow. So this is the arm stockade.
You broke a rule. You weren't supposed to get close to him like that. So you're coming and being sent to be locked up.
Wow.
And then I shared here, like to see what's next. Like meaning that you put a thumbs up for this as being a beginning, and then to see what's next is saying, if you like this, we're going to continue on from here to create more with more information and more detail in regards to the times of slavery and what people went through.
Wow. You talked about how you were unable to be accepted into your own community because you were not fully part of your community because you were mixed race. How did you eventually get to the point where you could learn? What did you do to surpass that or overcome that?
Well, unfortunately, it took a lot of unhappy times in my life, and I really hope no other person has to deal with that the way that I did, which I'm sure many have. I had to actually get in trouble and be put in a location where a lot of Black people were placed at the time, and that is in a jail for negative actions in which a person that was white probably just would have got probation or told to stop the action. I was instantly put in a jail. And in the jail is where I was 18 years old, and I saw my first person of color. I'd never seen a Black person before then until 18. And that's where I got a lot of the rejection from the people of color. But one individual who was very loving and kind, been in jail for a long time, came to me and said, if you want to survive here, you're going to have to learn about who you are. And she took me in and she taught me a lot of things about the Black culture and who I was in that aspect of my life because of the way I was being treated when I was growing up. It was normal to be refused. It's what I grew up in. I wasn't allowed on people's property. I was called negative names. I wasn't allowed to play with certain kids because of the color of my skin. But I thought that was just how life was because that's all I knew. And she showed me something different that made me desire to know so much more. I always want to know more, not just about the Black culture and the white culture. I want to know about all cultures. I want to see why it is that we can't share our histories and accept that one's history is another person's living. It doesn't mean they're less than, it's another way.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. There's new ways. Education, how we learn so much from another culture, the ability to celebrate another culture's celebrations. We do Christmas in America, other places don't. What do they celebrate? Can we have fun doing that? The gay pride, um, they always have in the big cities, they have going down the street, the beautiful people prancing around and dancing. And why aren't we celebrating and enjoying the activity? Yeah, that's the fun, that's the multicultural of it. Don't judge, learn about it and enjoy the actions. See that something fun is coming from that parade going down the road.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
that's my goal. We should be willing to learn about it all and accept it all and enjoy it all. There is such a hard ability, and again, this it could be religion that causes this, it can be personal life experiences that cause this. There is such an issue, and it is so hard for people to be open and willing to accept. I don't understand why. And, a lot of times people come to me saying, well, you should understand why, because look what happened to you when you were a kid. Well, that's exactly the reason why I want to be open,
Mm-hmm.
is because I don't want that for somebody else. Because if I feel a certain way,
Right.
one of the common statements is, if you don't feel that way, you don't interact with that kind of person. Well, I just closed a bunch of doors when I made that decision.
Mm-hmm.
When I said, I believe only this one thing and it has to be this way, I just closed a whole bunch of doors over here where other people may not believe the same, but are just as loving as I am. They just choose to live a different life. And there is nothing wrong with that. Does that mean that I'm accepting killers and child molesters? And no, that doesn't. But I'm not going to go out there and see if I can point out someone who is gay or someone who is black or someone who is Hispanic and say, oh, because there was a killer that was Hispanic, all of those Hispanic people are killers.
Right.
That's not fair to anyone to claim your own personal experience as a
Mm-hmm.
reason to be negative. Share that experience so that other people can understand and we can have empathy and hopefully change that fight and that anger and that hate. Because guess what? There's a Hispanic person over there that you have negative feelings about who can come up and say, are you having a good day? Let's say hi. And they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to treat you that same way that you may have experienced. And that right there just opened a door for you to see that someone else, by the color of their skin or lifestyle, is not the reason for what happened to you in your life.
Right. 100%.
It's it's hard, and people have a hard time letting that go, and I don't know how people can do it. I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
How they can hold on to one negative thing and say that's the way it is forever, even in a religion, saying the Bible said so it has to be. Well, that's your life. You choose that. I only want to be around people who believe in what I believe. well, you just closed the doors to exactly what your religion claims we are to
Mm-hmm.
have: love
Right.
and openness to everyone. So, how
Exactly.
are you practicing what you claim? It's hard for me to understand how people don't do that. And that's why I'm hoping that these type of worlds, going in and living it, see it.
Mm-hmm.
You are the one here who is the slave. You are not the master. Here you're the slave. You have to be treated the way the slave was in my worlds, in these type of worlds that I'm building. The house will be another world that you will go into, and you're going to be in a kitchen and doing house cleaning. You're the slave doing it. You're not the master. You're going to hear that person telling you and you getting in trouble if you didn't do it exactly the way they wanted it. That's just for that feeling of going, dang, I didn't like that. Well, neither did they. And
Right.
that's why the fight is so hard to stop that negative, because someone else does something or lives something different. They can't be equal.
Right.
We have
Mm-hmm.
that issue with income, money. Oh my goodness. The lower income is seen as less valuable because they don't have as much, just like the color of someone's skin. Exactly the same thing. We're doing it exactly the same. Now,
Oh,
just
I
with a money instead of a color.
I recently laid into someone about that. They talked about how it's you know, it had to do with money and saving money. I'm like, that's great that you can save money. That's a privilege that you have, because a lot of people are paycheck to paycheck if they're lucky, or they're
Mm-hmm.
taking some money from here, let's say food, to pay for electricity. Now they're not eating, you know? And it's like, and they don't get that. So when I see people say, oh, well, life is hard, but saving money is, saving money is hard, or was one of those hard. Have you seen the memes where it says, like, being fat is hard, being thin is hard, it, but choose your hard, I think is what it was, something to that effect. And it had to do with being poor, like saving money is hard, spending, and I'm just like, no, you don't get it. You just do not
Yeah.
get it. That was so tone deaf. I ended up just cringing and getting fiery mad, like so mad that I actually responded in a very negative way, because I'm like, no, you don't get it. This People don't choose this. This is because something's happened at some point that hasn't allowed them to go forward, to move up, to go ahead. It doesn't matter what
Mm-hmm.
it was, but something happened at some point in their lives, so they didn't have any other options. You know,
And
um,
until you understand that, until a person understands what that is
yep,
exactly, they will never know what put them there. And they will always, if they have the opportunity to save money, they will say, see, I lived in a studio for 6 years and I did it.
right.
Well, that's great for you, but something occurred in that other person's life that prevented that, even living in the studio or homeless on the streets. I hear so much now, again, coming back to this type of world, this
Yeah,
slavery, this feeling of someone is
yeah.
slapping you into latches because you didn't understand or you couldn't get or you couldn't do. It's the same exact thing.
Mhm.
Homelessness, so many people saying the drugs, they just don't want, they're just dirty,
Yeah.
they're flooding our streets. They're, you know what? If you take a minute and you take the time to understand not just that person, but the situation,
Mhm.
I bet it would change the mind as to why you're thinking that. Because
Yeah.
I understood why a homeless person would choose homeless over paying for a studio. And it was ugly when I saw how much of that was not choice by personal desire,
Right.
but choice by survival. It was the only way they were able to survive. And that is because they were not able to get a job.
Yep.
Disability exists. You cannot get a job. The way
Yep.
they have it set up with the disability is that if you work, if you do any kind of work for a set amount of time, you are no longer disabled, which means you no longer get the medical coverage to get the medication that has made you able to work. Well, guess what? The job that you just got doesn't cover any of that medication because it's a pre-existing condition that their medical just doesn't cover those meds for things you already have. So you don't get the meds, you end up dead, or you just stay on Social Security, get your medical, stay alive, and you can't afford a place to live.
It's so
Which do
true.
you choose? Just make that choice. Save the money, get the job, don't get your meds. Just do it and you'll be fine.
No.
Many people, especially people who are privileged and their abilities are already set because of family, jobs, their businesses, they're already set in a job for when they turn 18. They've never
Yep.
experienced the hards. They a lot of times will see it as not a challenge for you, but that's your problem. Why didn't you do something about that? Well, there's some things you just can't change. And
Yeah.
people
No.
need to respect that and understand that we live with those choices because sometimes there's no other option for us.
Yeah. No. People just don't get it. They really don't. I grew up in the city, in the inner city, very poor, and I volunteered at a homeless shelter, so I got a lot of firsthand experience, talking to people who were homeless. So when I became homeless as a teenager, I chose to be homeless versus being abused by family. But I was lucky. I got to couch surf, so I don't really consider that true homelessness. I was couch surfing. I only spent a couple of nights out elsewhere, and people don't get that. They don't. They don't. They don't. I still see that as the privilege that I had, that I got to couch surf, you know, and then I got to meet my husband and we got to get married. Yeah, it was
That's
kind of an
great.
escapism. That was kind of an escapism on and yeah. I got
I mean,
lucky.
that's great that that came. Yeah, that's great that that came, but sometimes that doesn't come for people. And so what
No,
are they to do? You know, it,
exactly. And it's and
it
that's but it should never happen. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's like the system saw me as a white person. My parents were white. They were not we were poor, but we had more than a lot of people, you know, relatively speaking. And so the Department of Social Services said, "Oh, she's lying. The family says she's lying, so she must be lying about what's going on." And so that white privilege, I asked to go to foster care. That's how bad it was. I wanted to go into foster care, and I knew how bad foster care was.
mhm,
But I would prefer that over what I was going through. I also knew that my
right.
grandparents would take me in if I went into foster care. I had that privilege too. And so, yeah, it's like there's all these different levels of privilege and anti-privilege, and it's like I wish people would understand that there's more to it. They
It's
have to get to know the whole story. When I've talked to
yes.
people who are homeless, a lot of it's because they actually suffer mental illness that isn't treatable, or well, it is treatable, but it isn't treatable in the sense that they don't have the health care to treat it. You know,
Exactly.
it's there's supposed to be this parity now, didn't used to be, between medical and psychiatric, but there's not enough psychiatric care to get care. There's not enough doctors, not enough beds, not enough hospitals. So, and people like in New Hampshire, if you have a bad enough mental illness, you're not going to a hospital. You're going to the prison. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Mhm.
So in New
Oh yeah.
Hampshire, unlike Massachusetts, or in Vermont, in New Hampshire you go to prison for it. That's the only place they have
Yeah.
for the mentally ill. That is
Wow.
really sad.
And where I'm located, the street is what they have for the mentally ill. And
Yeah.
it is seen all over the place in my state. It appears to be of abundance in a lot of the places that we used to call beautiful cities and the big
Mhm.
cities like Portland, Oregon. It's now seen more as an ugly place to live in a lot of aspects of the homeless, because you can see them everywhere on the sides of streets all over the place.
Wow.
And a lot of people just look at them and say, why are they doing that? Why are they leaving that stuff on the sidewalk? Why are they collecting all that stuff and just piling it up? Why are they setting up those tarps and making these on the side of the street? Why is all that garbage over there? What, you know, I really
Yeah.
wish I could write a story about my life, because I feel I've had an opportunity rather than a challenge that took from me. And that is because I've had that opportunity to experience so many things. I have been
Yeah.
homeless. I lived on the streets. I have a son who made that choice to live that way. He didn't want to work and he chose to be homeless. That was his choice. But he doesn't, collect a bunch of things and have a bunch of things. He just chooses to live a freer life of, I don't have to follow rules and I'm just going to live off the streets and in the lands, and that's his choice. But I was able to see more reason as to why he made that choice just by letting him live it and watching and experiencing. And oh, okay, I can see that. If that's what you want to do, that's great. I've got to experience the racist behaviors of both sides, black and white. I've gone to jail. I've seen where a person of color is convicted extremely harsher than a person who was white in the area in which I lived at the time, which was, Oregon State, of course, extremely. There's just so many challenges.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. If you take the challenge, it is beautiful. It really is. To be able
Yeah.
to go, it's okay, and I'm not going to tell you you're bad because you do that.
Right.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Let me learn. With the worlds that I'm putting together, it's not just going to be the African slavery,
Mm-hmm.
the African American. This is just where I'm starting, and I'm hoping to bring multiple people. I want to see multiple people of different cultures. I'm hoping that they'll join up with me, different cultures who
Mm-hmm.
want to share their history of their world, their life, their culture. I'm hoping that people will start building the history of China, the history of Spain, of Mexico, of Russia, of Africa, those actual places, their histories, and what
Yeah.
came about. Those all lead to what America is. We are kind of like that swamp land here,
Yeah.
because those countries are individual. We are of all culture. So each one of those histories means something for us here.
Definitely. And it's such, like I said, it's such an amazing, amazing world. And I was mentioning earlier how this little boy over here, or child, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but little child over
It's
here, and
just
it
a
just,
child.
it made me cry. And even though he's enjoying the music and stuff, it was just the idea of a child living like this and knowing that this that was all they had. There wasn't real hope
Yeah.
involved. And it's
And that's what they saw, was these people living in something bigger and people telling them to stay in their area.
yeah. Yep.
So it
Yeah.
definitely, that was the feeling I wanted people to see, is that, this is all they had. They still did the best they could with it. And so it's not just the sadness here.
Right.
The the difference is that people will hopefully start feeling the struggle is
Mhm.
when they go into the fields and do the work, and when they go into the house and they do the work, and they will see that they are going to have to do so much for such a small amount, and most likely
Yeah.
will not meet that goal, that maybe
Right.
they'll be able to say, man, I've done all this and I'm still not there. Exactly. That's why. Because there's
Yeah.
no other choice. You will never do enough.
Yeah. This world is just absolutely incredible.
Thank you. And I
I
hope
think
many people will visit.
I'm hoping. I'm really hoping, and I'm hoping this video helps make them want to come and see it for themselves. You know, see what it's like.
Inspiration for growth.
Yeah. And the people who aren't in Horizon, I hope that they understand what Horizon's about. It's not just about games. That there is lessons that we can learn that are positive. I mean, this is a positive lesson. You know, it's sad and it's painful, but it's positive because, you know, I'm not understanding. Respecting, I think, is the right word for it. Respecting the history.
With virtual reality, you're actually getting to experience a small piece.
Yeah.
And this is such a small piece. You know, it may not be the actual physical that you're going and you're actually being, treated in a manner that, I mean, you can leave the world so nobody can really beat you and nobody can really do those things.
Right.
But if you go through and you actually just kind of hang out and, you know, see how quickly going too close to the masters will lock you up, and how if you were hungry, this is all you get to eat, and there's little pieces of bones and, you know, whatever's left over in some water, heating over a pot, hoping that it's going to fill your family up. There's no meat,
Yeah.
unfortunately. They've just got it just in case, you know,
Yeah.
might get some meat tonight, so we got to have it going. And the hutch area is similar to this. The next world, called the hutch, is similar to this, but it's only inside the hutch. And it shows the family inside and with their bowls of soup. And you can only look out and see this area. You can't step out of. You just have to stay in the hutch, and that's where you have to be for the night. And it's dark. So again, that's those next levels that I want to continue. And if people like this and want to know, give me your feedback. Tell me what needs to be added. Let's get these worlds realistic and make people actually get a moment to experience what's struggling for the African American slaves were like, or I should say the African slaves were like, because they weren't considered African Americans then. But the slaves were really treated wrong. And you can experience some. All that can come together.
Thank you so much, Broca.
It may open minds.
This has just been absolutely incredible.
I appreciate you letting me take this opportunity to share this. And again, I'm hoping that people will see it and realize that this is just the beginning, and we can do some wonderful things here and possibly open up some minds.
Definitely. I think you will. If nothing else, you've opened mine, and
thank you.
And I'm trying harder. So thank you.